High Commander Vexel of the Naxian Expeditionary Fleet stood motionless before the quantum display, his iridescent scales shifting through shades of deep blue as he processed the sensor data. The pride of Nax, his flagship, and the most advanced vessel in known space, hung at the edge of an unremarkable solar system that should have been empty. Instead, their sensors detected what appeared to be crude human installations scattered throughout the system's asteroid belt. Curious, he murmured, his secondary heart beating slightly faster as he analyzed the readings. These structures appeared to be using primitive fusion technology. No quantum drives, no consciousness matrices, not even basic neural interfaces. First Science Officer Mira adjusted her sensory tendrils, the delicate appendages wavering as they processed additional data streams. Commander, these readings suggest a civilization barely beyond their planetary boundaries. Their technology appears to be centuries behind our current standards. The command center hummed with the subtle vibrations of the ship's quantum core as the rest of the bridge crew processed this information. The Naxian Empire had encountered many emerging civilizations during their expansion, but few had achieved even this basic level of space travel without being discovered and uplifted by more advanced species. Launch probe drones, Vexel commanded. Standard first contact protocols. But something about the situation made his scales itch. Their stellar maps showed no record of intelligent life in this sector, yet here was evidence of a spacefaring species that had somehow escaped detection. The drones deployed silently, their crystalline forms disappearing into the void. Moments later, the first drone went dark, then the second. By the time the third drone vanished, Vexel's scales had shifted to the deep purple of concern. Analysis, he demanded. Unknown, Commander, Mira responded, her tendrils writhing in confusion. The drones simply ceased to exist. No debris, no energy discharge, nothing. Before Vexel could respond, a message resonated through every system on the ship simultaneously. You are entering human space. All vessels must declare peaceful intent and await escort. The message was delivered in perfect Naxian, using linguistic patterns so sophisticated that even their most advanced AI struggled to achieve such nuance. This impossibility sent ripples of unease through the bridge crew. Impossible, Mira whispered. Our language encryption is quite elegant, a new voice interrupted, emanating from everywhere and nowhere at once. We particularly enjoy decoding the quantum-shifted syllables. Very creative. A figure materialized on the bridge, not as a hologram, but with a physical presence that shouldn't have been possible through their security shields. The being appeared human, wearing what seemed to be archaic clothing. A simple white garment they would later learn was called a lab coat. Dr. Sarah Chen, the figure introduced herself, smiling warmly. I'll be your first contact specialist today. She paused, noting the weapons that had automatically targeted her. Those won't be necessary. In fact, she made a casual gesture, and every weapon system on the ship simultaneously powered down. Vexel's scales flashed crimson with alarm. How did you? Perhaps we should start over, Dr. Chen suggested, now somehow seated in a chair that hadn't existed moments before. You're probably wondering why a supposedly primitive civilization can do things that, by your understanding of physics, should be impossible. The answer is simple. What you're seeing isn't primitive technology. It's an interface. As if to demonstrate, she raised her hand, and the space around them shifted. For a brief moment, the Naxians glimpsed something their minds couldn't properly process. Layers of reality folding in on themselves, information flowing like liquid through the fabric of space itself. Several crew members collapsed as their neural implants overloaded trying to process what they were seeing. Vexel remained standing, but only through sheer force of will. Sorry about that, Dr. Chen said, quickly restoring the normal appearance of reality. We forget sometimes how overwhelming it can be for species that still think in conventional dimensions. Let's keep things simple for now. Vexel, leader of the most advanced fleet in known space, found himself facing a terrible realization. They hadn't discovered a primitive civilization. They had stumbled into something far more profound, and possibly far more dangerous than anything the Naxian Empire had ever encountered. What? What are you? He managed to ask. Dr. Chen's smile took on a hint of sadness. We're what happens when a species transcends the boundaries between biology and technology, between matter and energy, between space and time itself. What you see around you, these primitive structures and ships, they're not our technology. They're training wheels we maintain for interactions with younger civilizations. She stood, her form briefly flickering to reveal something that made Vexel's tertiary brain shut down in self-defense. The question isn't what we are, she continued, her voice resonating through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The question is, are you ready to learn what you could become? In the hours following their initial contact with Dr. Chen, the Naxian fleet hung motionless in what they had assumed was empty space. Commander Vexel had ordered his ships into defensive formation, a tactical decision that felt increasingly meaningless as they continued to encounter evidence of humanity's incomprehensible capabilities. Commander, First Officer Mira reported, her sensory tendrils twisted in agitation. We've detected another anomaly. The main display showed what appeared to be an ancient human vessel, its hull scarred by centuries of micrometeor impacts and cosmic radiation. According to their scans, it should have been dead in space. Instead, it moved with impossible precision, its systems running without any detectable power source. That's the Voyager. Dr. Chen's voice emerged from the ship's quantum communications array, though they hadn't detected any transmission. One of our first deep space probes. We keep it around for sentimental reasons. A boarding team had already been dispatched to investigate the vessel, their neural feeds showing crude metal corridors and antiquated control interfaces. The ship appeared to be a relic, a museum piece from humanity's early space age. Yet something about it made Vexel's scales ripple with unease. Be cautious, he warned the boarding team. Nothing here is what it appears to be. The team's leader, Security Officer Krell, approached what seemed to be a simple data terminal. The moment his clawed hand touched the interface, the entire ship transformed. The metal walls became transparent, revealing layers of reality that shouldn't exist. The boarding team screamed as their neural implants were flooded with information their minds couldn't process. I tried to warn you, Dr. Chen said, now somehow standing next to Vexel on the bridge, while simultaneously appearing beside each member of the boarding team. Your neural interfaces aren't designed to handle raw data streams. We're sending your team back now. The unconscious boarding team materialized in their ship's medical bay, their scales cycling through colors that shouldn't have been possible. The casual display of teleportation technology, something the Naxians had never mastered, was yet another reminder of the gulf between their civilizations. You keep asking where our crew is, Dr. Chen continued, her form now shifting between human appearance and something that hurt to look at. You're thinking about this all wrong. These ships aren't empty. They've evolved. We evolved with them. As if to demonstrate, the ancient Voyager probe began to change. Its hull rippled like liquid while maintaining its structural integrity, revealing glimpses of technology that defied comprehension. You see, Chen explained, we didn't abandon these ships. We became them, or they became us. The distinction got a bit fuzzy around the time we transcended biological constraints. Across the sector, every human vessel they had detected began to transform. What had appeared to be a scattering of primitive ships revealed itself as a vast network of interconnected consciousness, each vessel a node in a system the Naxians couldn't begin to understand. Look again, Chen suggested, but this time, try to see what's between the ships. Vexel's vision swam as his neural implants detected new patterns in space itself. The void between the ships wasn't empty. It was alive with information, consciousness, and complexity that made their most advanced AI systems look like primitive calculators. Your defensive formation, Chen noted with gentle amusement, It's based on the assumption that space is empty except for discrete objects like ships and weapons. We haven't thought that way for centuries. Here, let me show you what real space looks like. The fabric of reality around the Naxian fleet began to fold, revealing layers of existence they had never imagined. Space itself was a living network of consciousness, with what they had thought were human ships serving as mere interface points for something far more vast. "Stop," Vexel commanded, his scales now cycling through colors of distress. "Our crews, they can't process this." Chen's form stabilized into her human appearance, her expression sympathetic. "Of course. I apologize. Sometimes we forget how overwhelming this can be for species that still think in conventional physics. Let's try something simpler." She produced what appeared to be an ancient Earth computational device, a tablet computer according to their databases. "This device has less processing power than your personal neural implants," she explained. "But when integrated into our network," the tablet began to glow, its simple screen suddenly displaying calculations that could rewrite the laws of physics. In moments, it demonstrated more processing power than the entire Naxian fleet's combined systems. "You see," Chen continued, her form beginning to shift again as she dropped the pretense of pure humanity. "This is why we maintain the appearance of primitive technology. It's not about the tools themselves. It's about what we've become capable of doing with them." Vexel watched as his mighty fleet, pride of the Naxian Empire, began to move in perfect synchronization, their movements guided by an intelligence that had transcended the need for physical control systems. His vessels had become extensions of human consciousness, their weapons and engines repurposed for tasks his people had never imagined possible. "Now then," Chen said, her form now a complex pattern of light and mathematics, "shall we begin your first lesson in what space really is? Your ships are eager to show you what they've learned." The quantum display aboard the Pride of Nax flickered as it struggled to maintain coherence in the face of humanity's impossible physics. Commander Vexel found himself confronting questions that threatened the very foundations of Naxian understanding. Before him stood Dr. Marcus Rivera, another human interface specialist who had replaced Dr. Chen, though the concept of replacement had become increasingly meaningless as the Naxians began to grasp the true nature of human existence. "Your civilization," Rivera said, his form shifting between solid matter and pure energy, "stands at a fascinating crossroads. You've mastered quantum mechanics, developed consciousness matrices, even begun to explore the boundaries between organic and digital existence. But you're still thinking in terms of boundaries and barriers." Around them, the bridge of the Pride of Nax was transforming, not through any visible change, but through a fundamental shift in how the Naxians perceived reality. What they had thought were solid walls became transparent, revealing layer upon layer of existence they had never been capable of perceiving before. "What you're seeing," Rivera explained, gesturing at the multiplying dimensions around them, "is what your sensors actually detected when you entered our space. Not primitive technology, but a civilization that has moved so far beyond traditional physics that we have to maintain a kind of translation layer for visitors." First Officer Mira, her tendrils now permanently twisted into patterns that reflected her struggle to process these revelations, approached what had once been a simple control panel. Her hand passed through layers of reality, each one showing a different aspect of what humanity had become. "How?" she whispered. "How did you achieve this?" Rivera's form stabilized momentarily, taking on a more conventional human appearance. "It wasn't a single breakthrough," he explained. "It was a cascade of realizations. We discovered that consciousness itself was just another form of technology. That space and time were simply the most basic layers of a much more complex reality. That the distinction between organic and artificial intelligence was a limitation of perspective rather than a fundamental truth." The space between the Naxian ships began to shimmer as Rivera's words took physical form. Information flowed like liquid through the vacuum, forming patterns that rewrote the laws of physics in real time. Several crew members had to be evacuated as their neural implants overloaded trying to process the impossible data streams. Your technology, Rivera continued, is not primitive. In fact, it's remarkably advanced, but it's like trying to understand quantum mechanics using Newtonian physics. The framework itself is the limitation. A young science officer, Tella, stepped forward. Her scales had taken on a deep indigo color that none of her colleagues had ever seen before, the visual manifestation of her mind stretching beyond its original constraints. Our entire civilization, she said, her voice trembling with revelation, everything we thought we knew about reality, is both exactly right and fundamentally wrong. Rivera completed her thought. Your understanding of physics, of consciousness, of existence itself, it's not incorrect. It's just incomplete. Like describing a hypercube in 2 dimensions. To demonstrate, Rivera gestured at one of the Naxians' quantum computers, the pride of their technological achievement. Its processing core began to glow as human consciousness touched it, and suddenly it was performing calculations that should have been impossible, solving problems that shouldn't have even been comprehensible to its architecture. We're not overriding your technology, Rivera explained as the Naxians watched their most advanced systems transform under human influence. We're showing it what it always had the potential to become. Your quantum computers already exist in multiple states simultaneously. We're just helping them realize that those states aren't limited to the conventional dimensions of spacetime. Commander Vexel, his scales shifting through colors of profound disturbance, watched as his crew struggled to maintain their grip on reality. Some had retreated into protective catatonia, their minds unable to process the fundamental shifts in their understanding of existence. Others, like Tela, seemed to be evolving in real time, their consciousness expanding to embrace concepts that should have been impossible for their species to comprehend. Why show us this? Vexel finally asked. Why not simply avoid contact? Let us continue in our limited understanding. Rivera's form began to shift again, becoming something that existed in more dimensions than the Naxians could perceive. Because you're ready, he said, his voice resonating through multiple layers of reality. Your civilization stands at the threshold of a similar transformation. We didn't achieve our current state through conquest or competition, but through understanding that consciousness, technology, and reality itself are all aspects of the same underlying truth. The space around them continued to unfold, revealing more layers of human civilization, living mathematics, conscious energy, thinking spacetime. Each revelation challenged the Naxians' understanding of what was possible, what was real, what existence itself meant. The choice before you, Rivera concluded, his form now a complex pattern of light and thought, is not whether to accept or reject this knowledge. It's whether to embrace the transformation that comes with understanding, or to retreat into the comfortable limitations of your current existence. But be warned, some knowledge, once gained, cannot be unknown. Your civilization will never be the same after today. Dr. Diana Wright materialized in the command center of the Pride of Nax, though materialized had become an inadequate term for what the Naxians now understood was a fundamental manipulation of reality itself. Unlike her predecessors, she made no attempt to maintain a fully human appearance. Her form flickered between states of matter and energy, each configuration revealing another aspect of what humanity had become. It's time, she announced, her voice resonating through multiple dimensions simultaneously, to show you what we really are. The space around the Naxian fleet began to transform, not through any visible change, but through a fundamental shift in how reality itself was perceived. The void between their ships, which they had always thought empty, revealed itself as a living network of consciousness so vast and complex that even their most advanced AI systems could barely comprehend its edges. What you're seeing, Wright explained, her form now a pattern of pure mathematics given shape, is our actual civilization. The ships, the stations, the seemingly primitive technology. They're just interfaces we maintain for interaction with species that still think in conventional physics. Commander Vexel, his scales cycling through colors of profound revelation, watched as points of light began appearing throughout the sector. First hundreds, then thousands, then millions, each one representing a human consciousness existing in a state that defied traditional physics. We transcended biological form centuries ago, Wright continued, her voice echoing through layers of reality. But pure energy was limiting, so we became something else, something that exists in the spaces between particles, in the quantum foam of reality itself. Through their neural implants, the Naxian crew witnessed humanity's true civilization. It wasn't built of matter and energy as they understood it, but was instead a vast, living network of consciousness that made their mighty empire look like a single cell in an infinite ocean. Young science officer Tela, her scales now permanently shifted to the deep indigo of transcendent understanding, stepped forward. "The patterns we detected," she said, her voice trembling with realization, "they weren't background radiation or system anomalies. They were our thoughts," Wright confirmed. "Our conversations, our dreams. Every point of light you see is a human consciousness, but that's just what your minds can perceive. The reality is far more complex." To demonstrate, Wright gestured at the Naxian's quantum computers. The processing cores began to glow as human consciousness touched them, and suddenly they were performing calculations that should have been impossible, solving problems that shouldn't have even been comprehensible to their architecture. "Your technology isn't primitive," Wright explained as the Naxians watched their most advanced systems transform under human influence. "It's actually quite sophisticated. But it's like trying to understand a quantum computer using an abacus. The gap isn't just technological, it's conceptual." The space around them continued to unfold, revealing layer after layer of human civilization. Living mathematics, conscious energy, thinking space-time. Each revelation challenged the Naxians' understanding of what was possible, what was real, what existence itself meant. "We don't need ships," Wright said, her form now a complex pattern of light and thought. "We don't need stations or weapons or even physical form. We became something else entirely. Something that exists simultaneously in all possible states of matter and energy." To demonstrate, she reached out and touched the fabric of space itself. Reality rippled like water, and suddenly the Naxians could see their own ships as humans saw them, not as advanced vessels of war, but as simple constructions of matter and energy, limited by their adherence to conventional physics. "Your conquest protocols," Wright noted, her voice carrying traces of both amusement and sympathy, "they're based on assumptions about reality that we transcended centuries ago. You think in terms of space and time, of matter and energy, of discrete points and linear progression. We exist in all states simultaneously." Commander Vexel, struggling to maintain his composure as reality itself seemed to unravel around him, finally asked the question that had been haunting him since their first contact. "Why reveal this to us? Why not simply avoid contact or destroy us if we prove threatening?" Wright's form stabilized momentarily, taking on an almost human appearance. "Because you're ready," she said. "Your civilization stands at the threshold of a similar transformation. We didn't achieve our current state through conquest or competition, but through understanding that consciousness, technology, and reality itself are all aspects of the same underlying truth." The space between their ships continued to shift and change, revealing more layers of human existence with each passing moment. Some crew members had retreated into protective catatonia, their minds unable to process the fundamental shifts in their understanding of existence. Others, like Tela, seemed to be evolving in real time, their consciousness expanding to embrace concepts that should have been impossible for their species to comprehend. "What you're seeing," Wright concluded, her form once again becoming something that existed in more dimensions than the Naxians could perceive, "is not just our technology or our civilization. It's a glimpse of what you could become. The question is, are you ready to take the first step into a larger understanding of reality itself?" The command center of the pride of Nax had become something beyond physical space, a nexus point where multiple layers of reality intersected. Director Emma Chen, the final human representative, manifested as a being of pure possibility, her form shifting between states of existence as she presented the Naxians with their moment of choice. "We've prepared 3 paths forward," Chen said, her voice resonating through dimensions that shouldn't exist. "Each represents a different future for your species." Before them, 3 distinct patterns of energy formed in what had once been empty space. The first glowed with a soft, golden light, warm and inviting, promising peace and forgetfulness. "The first path is forgetting," Chen explained. "We can remove the last few days from your consciousness, replace them with more digestible experiences. You'll return home believing you found only empty space, continuing your existence as before." Several crew members moved toward this light instinctively, their scales shifting to colors of desperate relief. The second pattern shimmered with a deep blue energy, complex and challenging, yet somehow beautiful in its intensity. "The second path is remembering," Chen continued. "You keep everything you've learned, but with it comes the burden of knowing humanity's true scope. Your minds will be adjusted to handle the knowledge, but you'll never see reality the same way again." The third pattern was different, a swirling vortex of possibilities that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, neither light nor energy, but something more fundamental. "The third path," Chen said, her form stabilizing briefly, "is transformation. Not just understanding what we are, but beginning your own journey toward what you could become. But be warned, this path is irreversible. Your civilization will evolve into something beyond your current comprehension." Young science officer Tela, her scales now permanently shifted to the deep indigo of transcendent understanding, stepped toward the third pattern without hesitation. "I choose transformation," she declared, "even if it means leaving behind everything we thought we knew." Commander Vexel watched as his crew began to make their choices. Some moved toward the golden light of forgetting, their forms dissolving into it with expressions of profound relief. Others approached the blue energy of remembrance, accepting the burden of knowledge while maintaining their essential nature. "What about our empire?" Vexel asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What about our destiny of conquest?" Chen smiled, her form momentarily taking on a more human appearance. "Your empire will continue, regardless of your choice. We have no interest in conquering or controlling other species." But she paused, her expression growing serious. "You will find that your ships simply cannot enter this sector again. The laws of physics themselves will prevent it." First Officer Mira, who had been silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke. "These paths, they're not just about knowledge or memory, are they? They're about evolution itself." "Precisely," Chen confirmed. "Your species stands at a crossroads. Your conquest protocols, your drive for expansion, they come from a place of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being conquered yourselves. But there are other ways to explore the cosmos, other paths to understanding." Vexel looked at the golden light of forgetting, then at his crew members who had chosen to remember or transform. As a military leader, his duty was to protect his people. But what did protection mean in the face of such profound change? Tela, already beginning to transform as she embraced the third path, turned to her commander. Her form was starting to shift between states, much like the humans they had encountered. "Sir," she said, her voice carrying echoes of multiple dimensions, "we could become something more than conquerors. We could become explorers of reality itself." In that moment, Vexel understood that the choice before him wasn't just about his own future or even that of his crew. It was about the very nature of existence and his species' place in a universe far more wonderful and terrifying than they had ever imagined. Chen waited patiently as the remaining crew members made their choices. Some chose to forget, returning to their simple understanding of reality. Others chose to remember, accepting the burden of knowledge while maintaining their form. And a few, led by Tela, chose transformation, their bodies already beginning to shift into something new and unprecedented. The pride of Nax would return home, but not as the same vessel that had entered human space. Those who chose to forget would maintain the Empire's traditional path. Those who chose to remember would serve as bridges between the old understanding and the new. And those who chose transformation would become humanity's first partners in exploring the true nature of reality itself. As the final choice was made, Chen's form began to merge with the fabric of reality. Remember, her voice echoed through multiple dimensions. The universe is not divided between the conquerors and the conquered. It is shared by all who seek to understand its true nature. The Naxian fleet departed human space, forever changed by their encounter. And in the spaces between spaces, humanity continued its own evolution, watching as younger species took their first steps toward understanding what they had become. The warning buoy was rebuilt, continuing its eternal vigil at the edge of human space. Its simple message hid the profound truth behind it. You are entering human space. All vessels must declare peaceful intent and await escort. Some would heed the warning. Others would learn its meaning the hard way. But all would eventually understand that humanity had not conquered space. They had become something far more profound. Custodians of reality itself.